Stop acting like an entrepreneur, my sister declared at family dinner. Your small internet venture isn't actual business. Everyone laughed. I nodded softly. Understood. First thing Monday, I messaged my investment firm. Pull the $150 million from Sarah's tech startup. An emergency board meeting was called. The wineglass paused halfway to my lips, its delicate stem suddenly feeling like a lead weight, when Olivia started talking. It was just a regular Sunday dinner at my parents' house, the usual family chatter filling the room, but in that single moment, everything shifted, though I didn't yet know how profoundly. The air in the dining room, usually so warm and comforting, went thick, heavy, like static electricity before a storm. My older sister had this way of commanding attention, her voice, sharp and clear, cutting through the general hubbub like a freshly honed blade. Stop playing pretend entrepreneur, she'd said, her eyes pinning me with that condescending smile I'd known since childhood. It wasn't just a smile, it was a practiced sneer, reserved for those she deemed lesser. Your little online thing isn't real business. My dad's fork clinked, a solitary, metallic sound that seemed deafening in the sudden silence. Mom shifted, a rustle of fabric, uncomfortable. Then Michael, Olivia's husband, snorted into his napkin, a sound that made my stomach clench into a tight, cold knot. Here's the thing, it wasn't just a snort, it was a performance, a perfectly timed punctuation mark to Olivia's dismissal. I mean, come on, Olivia continued, warming to her subject, the scorn in her voice growing. You sit at home in pajamas clicking on a computer. Real business people wear suits. They have offices. They have employees you can actually see. Michael nodded enthusiastically, a bobbing accessory to her tirade. He owned a commercial real estate firm, drove a Tesla, wore suits tailored so sharp they could cut glass. Olivia ran a tech startup, NextGen Solutions, that was making waves, she often reminded us. They lived in this glass and steel house in the suburbs with a pool and a 3-car garage. I, on the other hand, lived in a modest apartment downtown, working from my laptop. Olivia just closed a deal with Meridian Properties. $43 million. That's real business, Michael added, puffing out his chest. Then Olivia turned to me again, her tone dripping with false concern, like poison disguised as syrup. How much did you make this year from your online thing? The table waited, holding its collective breath. Mom looked like she wanted to disappear through the floorboards. Dad cleared his throat, a deep rumble, but said nothing. My younger cousin Chloe giggled nervously, quickly stifling it when she caught my eye. I do all right, I said quietly, the words barely a whisper. My throat felt dry, constricted. All right? Olivia repeated, the words infectious, contaminating everything they touched. You're 32 years old. Mom told me you still have student loans. Meanwhile, I'm expanding to 3 new markets next quarter. We just hired 15 new developers. Olivia, Mom started, her voice a plea, but my sister waved her off with an imperious hand. No, Mom. Someone needs to say it. She needs to hear this. You're not helping her by pretending her little side hustle is equivalent to what Michael and I do. It's not the same thing. Michael leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, a smug expression on his face. What's your revenue? Do you even have revenue? I looked at my plate. The salmon Mom had prepared so carefully, its flaky pink flesh, suddenly seemed utterly unappetizing. A wave of nausea rolled through me, threatening to overwhelm the rigid control I was maintaining. See? Olivia said triumphantly, her voice cutting through the thick silence. She can't even answer. That's because there's nothing to answer. Playing around on the internet isn't building a business. It's a hobby that might make you a few $100 a month if you're lucky. The entire table was staring at me now. Aunt Susan, Uncle Robert, my 3 cousins, all of them waiting to see what I'd say. I felt like an exhibit under glass, judged and found wanting. I folded my napkin carefully, deliberately, the crisp linen a small comfort against my clammy fingers, and placed it beside my plate. Understood. Olivia blinked. What? I understand what you're saying. You're right. I should probably think about getting a real job. The satisfaction that spread across her face, bright and triumphant, made my stomach churn. It was a visceral reaction, a deep twist of disgust. My cheeks felt hot, but my hands were icy cold. Finally, some sense, she said, practically preening. Michael actually mentioned his company might need an administrative assistant. It wouldn't be glamorous, but it would be steady income, real income. That's very generous, I said, standing up, the chair scraping loudly against the polished floorboards. Thank you for dinner, Mom. It was delicious. I should go. Mom looked distressed, her eyes wide and pleading. Honey, you don't have to leave. I have work tomorrow. Early morning. I kissed her cheek, a quick, almost imperceptible brush, and grabbed my coat. Olivia called after me as I headed for the door, her voice a condescending echo. Think about what I said. It's never too late to join the real world. I drove home in silence. The city lights blurred past, but I saw none of them. My hands didn't shake. My eyes didn't water. I felt absolutely nothing, which was somehow worse than feeling angry or hurt. It was a chilling, absolute void, a profound numbness that settled over me like a heavy, suffocating blanket. It's a peculiar kind of psychological defense mechanism, this emotional dissociation, when your mind simply disconnects from overwhelming pain or humiliation. It's not about being strong, it's about survival, putting up a wall so thick you can't feel the blows. This deep-seated calm, this void, often masks an even deeper, more volatile storm brewing beneath the surface. My apartment was quiet when I got back. The stillness felt heavy, absorbing every sound, every lingering thought of the dinner. I made tea, the ritualistic warmth of the mug a small comfort, and sat at my desk, staring at the 3 monitors that dominated my workspace. The little online thing Olivia had mocked so thoroughly. But that was only the beginning of the nightmare she was about to face. What Olivia didn't know, what I'd never told my family, was that my little online thing was actually Crimson Capital, a venture capital firm I'd built from scratch over the past 8 years. I'd started small, investing my own money from a software patent I'd sold when I was 24. That patent had netted me $12 million, and I'd used it to build something real, very real. Crimson Capital now managed assets worth $890 million. We had silent stakes in 43 companies across tech, healthcare, and renewable energy sectors. I kept my name off everything. My partners were front-facing executives who handled the public side while I operated in the background, analyzing deals and making investment decisions. One of those 43 companies was NextGen Solutions, Olivia's tech startup. She had no idea. When NextGen had been seeking Series B funding 2 years ago, my team had presented the opportunity. The app development platform showed promise. The numbers looked solid. I'd approved a $150 million investment that gave Crimson Capital a 38% stake in the company. Olivia thought her funding had come from a consortium of investors she'd never met. She'd signed the papers, celebrated with champagne, and never bothered to dig into the actual ownership structure. Michael had been so proud, bragging to everyone about how his wife had attracted major Boston tech money. That major Boston tech money was sitting in her apartment, drinking tea and staring at investment portfolios. I opened my laptop and pulled up the NextGen files. The company was doing well enough. Revenue was up. User acquisition was steady. They were burning through cash at a reasonable rate for a company their size. The deal to expand into 3 new markets that Olivia had mentioned at dinner was solid planning. But Crimson Capital owned 38%. And according to the shareholder agreement, any investor with more than 35% ownership had the right to call for a full board review and restructuring if they felt leadership wasn't serving the company's best interests. I'd never exercised that right. I'd let Olivia run her company the way she saw fit, from a distance. My phone buzzed, vibrating on the desk, startling me from my focus. A text from Mom, "I'm sorry about tonight. Olivia shouldn't have said those things." I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my email and started typing to Daniel Hayes, managing partner, Crimson Capital. From Sarah Jenkins, founder, Crimson Capital. Subject, NextGen Solutions. Immediate action required. Time sent, Sunday 11:47 p.m. Daniel. Pull our entire position from NextGen Solutions. Effective immediately. Exercise our contractual right to call an emergency board meeting for Tuesday morning, 9 a.m. I'll be attending in person. Prepare documentation for full investment withdrawal. We're liquidating our stake. I hit send, the click of the mouse echoing in the silent room. Then I closed my laptop. And I went to bed, sleeping better than I had in months. It was a deep, dreamless sleep, the kind that comes after a significant, difficult decision has been made. Monday was spent preparing. Daniel called at 7 o'clock in the morning, his voice tight with stress, barely masking his concern. "Are you absolutely certain about this? Once we file the notice, there's no walking it back quietly." "I'm certain," I replied, my voice calm, steady. The numbness from Sunday night had solidified into a cold, hard resolve. The board members are scrambling. Olivia called me 6 times yesterday evening. She's panicking. Good, I said, a bitter satisfaction curling in my chest. He sighed, a long, drawn-out sound that spoke volumes about the gravity of the situation. I've scheduled the meeting for tomorrow morning. Everyone confirmed attendance. They know this is serious. I spent the day reviewing every document related to the NextGen investment. The shareholder agreement that Olivia had signed without reading carefully. The one where Crimson Capital was listed clearly but nested within a complex LLC structure that obscured my personal involvement. It was legal. It was intentional. And it had worked exactly as designed, keeping my identity separate from my investments. Until now. Tuesday morning arrived with gray skies and a cold wind whipping through the city streets. I dressed carefully. Navy suit, crisp white blouse, heels that added 3 inches to my height, making me feel taller, more commanding. My hair went up in a professional twist, not a single strand out of place. Diamond studs glinted in my ears, the only jewelry I wore. I looked like money because I had money, a quiet, undeniable power. What I was about to unleash would forever redefine my family's perception of me, and hers. The emergency board meeting was set for NextGen's downtown offices, the fancy space Olivia had leased in a high-rise with a panoramic view of the river. I arrived at 8:45 a.m. and took the elevator to the 16th floor. The receptionist, a young woman with perfectly coiffed hair, looked startled when I walked in. "Can I help you?" "I'm here for the board meeting. Conference room B." "I'm sorry, but that meeting is..." She stammered, clearly flustered. "I'm aware it's closed. I'm Sarah Jenkins from Crimson Capital. I called the meeting." Her eyes widened, a flicker of fear replacing her earlier confusion. "One moment, please." She picked up her phone and spoke in hushed, urgent tones, her voice barely a whisper. 30 seconds later, a man in his 50s emerged from the hallway. Mark Davis, NextGen CFO. I'd reviewed his employment contract personally when he was hired. "Ms. Jenkins," he said, extending his hand, his eyes scanning my face, trying to place me. "This is unexpected. We weren't aware you'd be attending personally." "I don't usually attend in person," I said, shaking his hand, my grip firm. "But today's circumstances warrant it." He led me down the hallway to the conference room. Through the glass walls, I could see people already assembled, board members I recognized from their files, 2 venture partners from other firms, and Olivia, sitting at the head of the table, looking confident and completely unprepared. I walked in. Every head turned, a synchronized movement of surprise. Olivia's eyes met mine, a fleeting moment of confusion flickering across her face before she spoke. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" "I'm here for the board meeting." I took a seat at the table directly across from her, the heavy leather chair a silent statement of intent. "This is a board meeting for NextGen Solutions." "You are not." She stopped, mid-sentence, her voice trailing off. Something in my expression, in the cold, unyielding set of my jaw, must have registered. "What's going on?" she asked, a thread of uncertainty weaving its way into her tone. Mark Davis took his seat, then cleared his throat. "Ms. Jenkins is the founding partner of Crimson Capital. Crimson Capital holds the largest minority stake in NextGen Solutions." The color drained from Olivia's face, leaving her pale, almost translucent. Her eyes, wide with disbelief, locked onto mine. "What? Your Series B funding?" I said calmly, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. "The $150 million that allowed you to expand operations, hire your development team, and lease this beautiful office space. That money came from my firm." Olivia looked like she'd been slapped, a dull thud echoing in the quiet room. "That's not possible," she whispered, shaking her head. "The investment came from a consortium. I never saw your name on any documents. You didn't look carefully enough. Crimson Capital is listed in your shareholder agreement. We structured the investment through an LLC to maintain privacy, but the documentation was clear. Page 7, Section 3, Subsection B." I opened my briefcase, the sharp click of the latches resonating in the hushed room, and pulled out a copy, sliding it across the polished conference table. "You might want to review it." Her hands shook as she picked up the document, her fingers tracing the legal jargon, searching for proof that I was lying. She found my company's name instead, nested in the dense legal structure she'd signed without thorough review. "You've been my investor for 2 years, she whispered, her voice barely audible, a profound realization dawning on her face. "You never said anything." "You never asked what I actually did for a living," I replied, my voice still even, controlled. "You were too busy explaining to everyone how I didn't have a real business." It's an interesting dynamic, how people often resist evidence that contradicts their firmly held beliefs, especially when those beliefs contribute to their self-perception of superiority. This phenomenon, known as cognitive dissonance, meant Olivia had to either reconcile the fact that her unsuccessful sister was her primary investor, or dismiss the evidence. Her initial reaction was pure disbelief, a refusal to process the truth that shattered her narrative. Mark Davis cleared his throat again, a nervous cough. "Ms. Jenkins has exercised her right under the shareholder agreement to call for this emergency meeting. She's indicated an intention to liquidate Crimson Capital's full position." The other board members shifted uncomfortably, murmuring amongst themselves. One of them, Emily Chin from Silverton Partners, spoke up, her voice sharp with concern. "A full liquidation, that's a significant move. Can you elaborate on your reasoning?" I kept my eyes on Olivia, watching the slow, agonizing realization wash over her features. "I've lost confidence in current leadership. I don't believe the CEO has the judgment necessary to guide this company through its next phase of growth." "That's absurd," Olivia said, finding her voice again, though it was now laced with desperation. "You're doing this because I hurt your feelings at a family dinner. This is completely unprofessional." "What's unprofessional is dismissing someone's career without knowing anything about it," I replied, my voice still calm, almost chilling in its detachment. "What's unprofessional is mocking your own sister at a family gathering because you assumed she was unsuccessful. But this decision has nothing to do with my feelings, Olivia. This is purely business." My heart was pounding now, a frantic drum against my ribs, but I betrayed no outward sign. My hands remained steady on the table. "You can't just pull $150 million out of a company because I said something you didn't like," she cried, her voice cracking. "Actually, I can. And I am." I opened my laptop and pulled up the financial projections. NextGen has burned through $89 million of the original investment. You have $61 million remaining in operational funds. The company's valuation has grown to approximately $475 million based on your revenue growth and market position. Crimson Capital's 38% stake is currently valued at approximately $180 million. I paused, letting the numbers sink in, letting the weight of my decisions settle like a stone in the room. I'll be divesting that stake through a structured buyout that won't crater the company, but it will leave you scrambling for replacement funding. Emily Chin leaned forward, her professional curiosity piqued. Who's going to purchase that stake? Moving $180 million isn't something you do overnight. I have 3 interested buyers already lined up. They'll want board seats. They'll want voting rights. And they'll demand significant say in operational decisions. I looked pointedly at Olivia. Your autonomy as CEO is about to become much more limited. Mark Davis was typing rapidly on his tablet, his brow furrowed. If we lose Crimson's capital and bring in new investors with board seats, we'll need to restructure completely. The expansion plans would have to be delayed, possibly indefinitely. That's what happens when you build a company on someone else's money, I said, my voice cutting through the rising tension. You play by their rules. Olivia's jaw clenched, a muscle twitching in her cheek. You're sabotaging my company to prove a point. I'm withdrawing my investment because I don't trust your leadership. There's a difference. I closed my laptop with a definitive snap. You spent yesterday evening explaining to our entire family that I don't understand real business. You said I'm playing pretend. You offered to get me a job as an administrative assistant. The room was dead silent, the weight of my words hanging in the air like a pall. Here's what you don't understand, Olivia. While you were building one company with money you raised from investors, I was building a portfolio of 43 companies. I have stakes in everything from AI healthcare platforms to renewable energy startups. Last year, Crimson Capital's returns were 42%. My personal net worth is approximately $340 million. Olivia looked like she might be sick, her face a sickly shade of green. So, when you talk about real business, I continued, my voice gaining a quiet power, remember that I've been operating at a level you haven't even imagined yet. You got lucky with one successful app platform. Congratulations. I've been making calculated investment decisions that shape entire market sectors. Emily Chin was staring at me with newfound respect, her previous concern replaced by an undeniable awe. You're that Sarah Jenkins from the Crimson Capital that backed Nova Medical Systems and Helix Energy Solutions and Cascade Analytics, among others. Those are billion-dollar companies. They are now, I said, a faint, humorless smile touching my lips. They weren't when I invested. Olivia's hands were flat on the table, clutching the polished wood as if trying to ground herself, to keep from spinning into the abyss. Why didn't you tell us? Why did you let everyone think you were struggling? Because I don't need my family's validation. I don't need to prove anything to Dad or Mom or Aunt Susan or anyone else. I know what I've built. I know what I'm capable of. I stood up, pushing my chair back with a soft thud. But you decided to humiliate me publicly, and I won't tolerate that. Not from anyone. Sarah, please, Olivia's voice cracked, raw with desperation. Don't do this. We can talk about this privately. We're past that. I paused at the door, my hand on the cool metal handle. Daniel Hayes from my office will handle the transition details. You'll have 90 days to secure replacement funding before the buyout is finalized. I suggest you start making calls. I picked up my briefcase. You're destroying everything I worked for. Olivia called after me, her voice a desperate wail. I turned back, my eyes cold, unwavering. No, I'm removing my support from someone who doesn't respect me. You'll survive this. Your company might even thrive under new leadership. But you'll do it without my help, and you'll remember what it cost you. I left the conference room, walking past the stunned receptionist, her mouth agape. The elevator doors closed on NextGen Solutions, on Olivia's shocked, devastated face, on the board members scrambling to understand what had just happened. But the fallout from that confrontation was just beginning to ripple through the entire business world, and my own family. My phone started buzzing before I even reached the lobby. Mom, Dad, Aunt Susan. I ignored all of them. The drive back to my apartment took 20 minutes through downtown traffic. I kept the radio off, preferring silence to process what had just happened. Part of me felt vindicated. The look on Olivia's face when she realized who I actually was, the pure shock, had been worth 8 years of family dinners where I'd been treated like the unsuccessful younger sister. But another part of me felt hollow, empty, like I'd just burned down a bridge I might need someday. It was a strange dichotomy, the satisfaction warring with a deep, unsettling sadness. I parked in my building's garage and took the elevator to the 14th floor. My apartment felt different somehow when I walked in. The same furniture, the same view of the city, the same desk with 3 monitors displaying market data. But something had shifted. My laptop pinged with an incoming email. Daniel Hayes again. Subject, NextGen Situation. Media inquiries. Sarah, we're already getting calls from Tech Business Weekly and the Silicon Report asking about the NextGen divestment. I've stonewalled them for now, but this is going to be a story. How do you want me to handle it? Also, Emily Chin from Silverton Partners called. She wants to discuss potentially taking over part of our stake. She seemed very interested in working with you directly on future deals. Let me know your strategy here. I stared at the email. The business world moved fast. What had happened in that conference room an hour ago was already rippling outward, creating opportunities and problems in equal measure. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Not Mom or Dad this time. The caller ID showed a number I recognized, Kevin Miller, CEO of Cascade Analytics, one of my most successful portfolio companies. Kevin, I answered, my voice betraying none of the internal turmoil. What can I do for you, Sarah? Sarah, I heard through the grapevine about what happened at NextGen this morning. Is everything all right? Word traveled impossibly fast in the investment community. Everything's fine. Just a routine restructuring. Pulling $150 million is routine? His voice was skeptical but not unkind. Look, I don't mean to pry into your business, but Cascade has benefited enormously from your guidance over the past 4 years. If there's instability at Crimson Capital, I need to know. There's no instability. This was a singular situation involving personal circumstances that won't be repeated. Personal circumstances, he let those words hang in the air, weighted with unspoken meaning. I see. Well, I trust your judgment. You've never steered me wrong. But Sarah, and I'm saying this as someone who considers you a friend, not just an investor, be careful. Mixing personal and professional rarely ends well. I appreciate the concern. Good luck. And if you need to talk, I'm here. After he hung up, I sat down at my desk and opened the NextGen files again. Olivia's company was solid. The technology was sound. The team was competent. The market opportunity was real. Everything about it screamed good investment except for one factor. The CEO had publicly humiliated me. Was that enough reason to torpedo a $180 million stake? The question gnawed at me. My email pinged again, this time from someone unexpected. Mark Davis, NextGen CFO. Subject, confidential discussion request. Ms. Jenkins. I hope this message finds you well. After this morning's board meeting, I feel compelled to reach out directly. I've worked with Olivia for 18 months now. She's brilliant, driven, and has built something genuinely innovative. She's also young, sometimes arrogant, and occasionally lacks the emotional intelligence that separates good CEOs from great ones. What happened between you two is none of my business, but I have a company full of employees who depend on NextGen's success for their livelihoods. Families counting on this company to survive. I'm asking you to reconsider your decision. Not for Olivia's sake, but for theirs. If there's any possibility of finding a resolution that doesn't involve liquidating Crimson's position, I would be deeply grateful for the opportunity to discuss it respectfully. Mark Davis. I read the email 3 times. Mark was right. NextGen had a substantial workforce depending on the company's stability. Engineers who'd probably moved across the country for this job, recent graduates in their first positions, parents and spouses, people trying to build careers. Over 140 people whose livelihoods depended on the company's stability. None of them had anything to do with what Olivia said at a family dinner. My actions would affect all of them. The realization settled over me like cold water, an unexpected chill seeping into the rigid resolve I'd built. I'd been so focused on Olivia, on my anger and hurt, on the desire for justice, that I hadn't fully considered the broader impact. Pulling my investment wouldn't just damage my sister. It would send shockwaves through an entire organization, potentially unraveling the lives of innocent people. This shift in perspective, moving from personal grievance to collective responsibility, is a critical point in leadership. It moves beyond ego and into the realm of ethical decision-making, where the consequences for others must weigh heavily. I picked up my phone and called Daniel. He answered on the first ring. "Tell me honestly," I said without preamble. "Am I making a mistake? Do you want my professional opinion or my personal one?" "Both." Professionally, pulling out of a performing investment because of personal conflict is questionable at best. It sets a precedent that Crimson Capital makes decisions based on emotion rather than data. That's not good for our reputation. "And personally?" "Personally," he said, his voice softening slightly, "I understand why you're angry. What your sister said was cruel and dismissive. You had every right to be hurt. But Sarah, you've built something extraordinary over the past 8 years. Don't let one bad family dinner destroy what you've created. Not just Crimson Capital, but your relationship with your sister. She destroyed that relationship when she decided to humiliate me." My voice was sharper than I intended. "Did she? Or did she just make a mistake born of ignorance?" His voice was gentle, a subtle prod. "I'm not defending what she said, but from what you told me, she genuinely didn't know what you do. She thought she was giving advice to someone who was struggling. That doesn't make it okay." "No, it doesn't. But it makes it human. People say stupid things. They make assumptions. They hurt each other without meaning to." He paused, letting his words hang in the air. "The question is, what kind of person do you want to be? Someone who wields power like a weapon when you're hurt, or someone who uses power responsibly even when it's hard?" I closed my eyes, a wave of exhaustion washing over me. "You're supposed to be on my side. I am on your side. That's why I'm telling you this." After we hung up, I spent the rest of the afternoon wrestling with the decision. I pulled up financial models, reviewed investment theses, analyzed market conditions. Everything I looked at confirmed that NextGen was a solid company with strong fundamentals. Everything except my wounded pride. The fallout was immediate and brutal, hitting my carefully constructed world from all sides. By Wednesday morning, word had spread through the family about what had happened. Mom called 17 times. I finally answered on the 18th call, my fingers tight around the phone. "Sarah, what have you done?" she asked, her voice strained, bordering on a sob. "I withdrew my investment from a company. That's all." "That's all?" "Olivia is devastated. She's been crying for hours. Michael called your father, saying you sabotaged them out of spite. I made a business decision based on my assessment of leadership quality." The words felt cold, clinical. "Your sisters? How could you hurt her like this?" The question made something sharp twist in my chest, a pang of guilt that fought with the lingering anger. How could she hurt me like she did in front of the whole family? She didn't know what you actually did for work, Mom insisted, clinging to her narrative. She thought she was superior to me. She thought I was pathetic. And instead of asking questions or showing interest in my life, she decided to publicly humiliate me. My voice stayed level, but the tension was palpable. I don't owe her my financial support, Mom. Especially not after how she treated me. But $150 million, Sarah, you're putting her entire company at risk. She'll find other investors. She has a solid product. She'll land on her feet. Will she? Mom's voice broke, a raw sound of fear. Your father is worried she might lose everything. Then maybe she'll learn something about making assumptions. I hung up before Mom could respond, the silence that followed feeling both liberating and heavy with unspoken consequences. The phone rang again immediately. I turned it off. Wednesday brought another wave of consequences. Olivia went to the press. An article appeared in TechPulse about internal conflict at NextGen Solutions. She didn't name me specifically, but she talked about personal conflicts with investors that were threatening the company's stability. The business community started talking. My phone, when I turned it back on, was full of messages from other portfolio companies wondering if I was unstable, if I made investment decisions based on personal grudges, if their funding was secure. This is where the concept of social capital in the business world becomes vividly clear. Your reputation, your perceived stability and rationality, is as valuable as your financial assets. An emotional decision, even if personally justified, can rapidly erode that capital, making other investors and partners wary. I spent Tuesday afternoon on damage control calls. Kevin from Cascade Analytics wasn't the only CEO who had heard rumors. James Lee from Helix Energy Solutions wanted reassurance. Nova Medical Systems requested an emergency call with their board. Even small portfolio companies that represented less than 1% of Crimson's assets were suddenly nervous. I need you to understand something, I told James Lee, CEO of Helix Energy, my voice firm but reassuring. What happened with NextGen is an isolated incident involving unique personal circumstances. Your company's funding is completely secure. Crimson Capital's investment in Helix has always been based on your technology, your team, and your market potential. Nothing about that has changed. But you pulled $150 million from a successful company over what people are saying was a family argument, James said carefully, his tone reflecting the seriousness of the rumors. That makes investors nervous, Sarah. It makes us wonder if our funding depends on keeping you personally happy rather than hitting our business milestones. The words stung because they were fair, landing with a brutal accuracy. My cheeks flushed, a rare display of outward emotion. I understand your concern, and I'm going to be transparent with you in a way I haven't been with most people. My sister is NextGen's CEO. She didn't know I was her primary investor. There was a long silence on the other end of the line as he processed this. Your sister runs NextGen? Yes. And she didn't know you were backing her company. I keep my involvement in portfolio companies confidential. Always have. It allows me to make objective decisions without personal relationships clouding my judgment. Until those personal relationships blow up in your face, James said, not unkindly. I get it now. That's a complicated situation, but it doesn't change the fact that you made an emotional decision that's affecting your reputation. Our investors are already asking questions about Crimson's stability. What do you need from me to reassure them? What do you suggest? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Fix the situation with your sister. Show the community that you can handle personal conflict without nuking business relationships, because right now the narrative is that you're vindictive and unpredictable. That's not the Sarah Jenkins I've known for 3 years. After that call ended, I sat staring at my monitors for a long time. The market data scrolled past, meaningless numbers and charts that usually brought me clarity. But clarity felt impossible to find. And then, an unexpected visitor arrived, challenging my convictions even further. My apartment doorbell rang that evening around 7. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I checked the video intercom, I saw Michael standing in the hallway. Great. This should be fun. I buzzed him up and opened the door before he could knock, my shoulders squared. If you're here to yell at me, get it over with. He stepped inside, looking uncomfortable in my space. Michael rarely visited my apartment. I suspected he'd always found it too modest, too unglamorous for his taste. I'm not here to yell, he said quietly, his gaze sweeping over my simple furniture, my minimal decorations. His eyes landed on the view of the city through the windows, the distant lights twinkling like scattered diamonds. Nice view. It's adequate. Sarah, I'm going to say something, and I need you to hear me out before you respond. He leaned forward, hands clasped between his knees, a rare vulnerability in his posture. What Olivia said at that dinner was completely out of line. I should have stopped her. I should have defended you. Instead, I laughed along with everyone else, and I'm ashamed of that. I hadn't expected this, not from Michael. He continued, his voice heavy with regret. Okay, Olivia told me everything after the board meeting yesterday, about Crimson Capital, about your net worth, about how long you've been operating at this level while we all treated you like you were barely scraping by. He shook his head slowly, a profound weariness in his eyes. I've spent 2 years bragging about my wife's success while you quietly built something 10 times bigger than anything I'll ever accomplish. This isn't a competition, Michael. Isn't it, though? That's what families do. We compare. We measure success against each other. And somewhere along the way, we decided you were at the bottom of that hierarchy. He met my eyes, a genuine remorse finally etched on his face. We were wrong. Catastrophically wrong. Why are you telling me this? Because Olivia is falling apart. She's barely sleeping. She's convinced she's going to lose the company. But more than that, she's convinced she's lost you, her sister. And watching her spiral is making me realize how badly we all failed you. I walked to the window and looked out at the city lights, now fully glowing in the dusk, a vast tapestry of human endeavor. She dismissed my entire career in front of our family. She made me feel worthless. I know. And she's going to have to live with that. But Sarah, his voice cracked slightly, she's also your sister. The same person who used to walk you to school when you were scared. Who taught you how to drive. Who stayed up all night helping you study for your college entrance exams. I remember all of that. The memories flashed, sharp and clear, like old photographs. Then remember it means something. You two have history that goes beyond one terrible dinner. And I'm asking you, as someone who loves her, to consider whether destroying her company is really going to make you feel better in the long run. I turned to face him, a bitter taste in my mouth. Why do you care? If NextGen fails, it hurts you too. Your wife's success reflects on you. Isn't that what you wanted, to be married to a successful CEO? He flinched, the accusation landing square. That's fair. And yes, partly I'm here because NextGen failing would be catastrophic for our family financially. But I'm also here because I've watched Olivia realize what she lost. Not the funding, though that's terrifying enough, but her relationship with you. She's been crying at random moments, staring at old photos from when you were kids, talking about how she took you for granted. Good. Maybe she should feel guilty. She does. Trust me, she does. But guilt doesn't solve anything. It just eats people alive from the inside. Michael stood up, his face etched with concern. I'm not asking you to pretend nothing happened. I'm asking you to consider whether there's a version of this situation where you don't lose your sister permanently. After he left, I made tea and sat at my desk, the warmth of the mug a fleeting comfort against the chill of my thoughts. What he'd said echoed in my mind: old photos, Olivia crying, our shared history. I thought about the time Olivia stayed up all night helping me study for my college entrance exams. The way she'd threatened to fight anyone who bullied me in middle school. How she brought me soup every day for a week when I had pneumonia at 23. Before the comparison started, before the competition, before we drifted into these roles of successful sister and struggling sister that had never been accurate to begin with. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom: "Please talk to your father. He's worried about both of you." I called Dad instead of texting back. He answered immediately, his voice filled with relief. "Sarah," he said, "thank God. Your mother has been beside herself." "I know. I'm sorry I haven't been responsive." "What's going on?" "Olivia told us some things, but I want to hear your side of it." So, I told him everything. About Crimson Capital, about building my firm in silence, about investing in Olivia's company without her knowledge, about the dinner and what she'd said and how small she'd made me feel. Dad listened without interrupting, a quiet, attentive presence on the other end of the line. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "I failed you," he said finally, his voice thick with emotion. "What?" "No, Dad. I did. Your mother and I both did. We were so focused on Olivia's visible success that we never bothered to ask what you were actually doing. We assumed you were struggling because you weren't flashy about your accomplishments. We should have known better. We should have known you." My throat tightened, a wave of unexpected emotion washing over me. I didn't make it easy. I kept everything quiet on purpose. "Because we made you feel like you had to," Dad said, his voice soft but firm. "Because we created an environment where Olivia's way of doing things, loud, public, progressive, was the only way we recognized success. You found a different path. And instead of celebrating that, we ignored it. I'm not blameless here. What I did to Olivia's company. What you did was react to being hurt. That's human. Maybe not the wisest business decision, but human." He sighed, a heavy sound. "Olivia is devastated, honey. Not just about the company, though that's part of it. She's devastated that she hurt you so badly. She called me this morning and spent an hour crying about how she destroyed your relationship. She should have thought about that before she decided to humiliate me. You're absolutely right. She should have. But people make mistakes. Stupid, hurtful mistakes. The question is whether you can find a way to forgive her, even if you can't forget what happened." After we hung up, I sat in the darkening apartment thinking about forgiveness and revenge and what I actually wanted from this situation. Did I want Olivia to suffer? Did I want her to lose everything she'd built? Or did I just want her to see me? Really see me, not as the little sister or the struggling entrepreneur, but as an equal, as someone worthy of respect. My laptop was still open to NextGen's financial files. I pulled up the employee roster and started reading through names and positions. Engineers who'd probably moved across the country for this job, recent graduates in their first positions, parents and spouses, people trying to build careers. Over 140 people whose livelihoods depended on the company's stability. This is the responsibility of power, the understanding that your decisions reverberate far beyond the immediate target, impacting entire ecosystems of individuals. It's a crucial psychological shift from personal vendetta to recognizing the broader social contract. Daniel called Wednesday morning. "We need to have a conversation." "Go ahead." "The other partners are concerned. What happened with NextGen is raising questions about your judgment." "My judgment is fine. You pulled $150 million from a performing company because your sister insulted you at dinner. That's not fine, Sarah. That's petty." The word hit harder than I expected, a sharp, unexpected blow. My breath hitched. She didn't just insult me. She tried to make me feel worthless in front of my entire family. And now you've proven you have the power to destroy her career. Point made. But the cost might be your reputation. I stared at my monitors, the numbers and charts and data points that had been my whole world for 8 years. What do you want me to do? Talk to her. Work something out. Show the business community that you're not someone who lets personal feelings drive investment decisions. Even though that's exactly what I did. Even though that's exactly what you did, Daniel confirmed, his voice firm. Fix this, Sarah, or Crimson Capital's reputation is going to suffer. He was right. I hated that he was right, but he was. I drove to Olivia's house Friday evening. The glass and steel structure, usually so imposing, looked less impressive in the fading light, more vulnerable somehow, a house that had seen better days. Michael answered the door, his face a mask of hostility. You've got a lot of nerve showing up here. I need to talk to Olivia. She doesn't want to see you. Michael, please, just let me talk to her. He stared at me for a long moment, his gaze searching, then stepped aside, a grudging concession. Living room. Don't make this worse. Olivia was sitting on the couch, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Her eyes were red and swollen, no makeup, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked utterly exhausted, like all the fight had been drained from her. Hi, I said quietly, the word feeling inadequate. Come to finish the job? Her voice was raw, hoarse. No, I came to talk. There's nothing to say. You made your point. I'm a terrible sister who underestimated you. You're rich and powerful, and I'm an idiot. Congratulations. Her bitterness hung heavy in the air. I sat down in the chair across from her, the plush cushions feeling alien beneath me. You're not an idiot. I didn't recognize that my own sister was the investor keeping my company alive. That makes me pretty stupid. Or it makes me very good at staying anonymous. She laughed, a short, bitter sound. Why did you hide it? Why didn't you ever tell us what you actually do? Because I didn't want this. I gestured vaguely between us, to the palpable tension, the years of unspoken grievances. I didn't want family dynamics mixed up with business. I didn't want Dad asking for investment advice or Mom worrying about risk. Were you feeling competitive? A pause. Well, that worked out great. We sat in silence. Outside, a car drove past. Inside, a clock ticked somewhere in the house, a monotonous rhythm. I spent the last week trying to find replacement funding, Olivia said finally, her voice weary. Nobody wants to touch us. The word is out that Crimson Capital is. Stop acting like an entrepreneur, my sister declared at family dinner. Your small internet venture isn't actual business. Everyone laughed. I nodded softly. Understood. First thing Monday, I messaged my investment firm. Pull the $150 million from Sarah's tech startup. An emergency board meeting was called. The wineglass paused halfway to my lips, its delicate stem suddenly feeling like a lead weight, when Olivia started talking. It was just a regular Sunday dinner at my parents' house, the usual family chatter filling the room, but in that single moment, everything shifted, though I didn't yet know how profoundly. The air in the dining room, usually so warm and comforting, went thick, heavy, like static electricity before a storm. My older sister had this way of commanding attention, her voice, sharp and clear, cutting through the general hubbub like a freshly honed blade. Stop playing pretend entrepreneur, she'd said, her eyes pinning me with that condescending smile I'd known since childhood. It wasn't just a smile, it was a practiced sneer, reserved for those she deemed lesser. Your little online thing isn't real business. My dad's fork clinked, a solitary, metallic sound that seemed deafening in the sudden silence. Mom shifted, a rustle of fabric, uncomfortable. Then Michael, Olivia's husband, snorted into his napkin, a sound that made my stomach clench into a tight, cold knot. Here's the thing, it wasn't just a snort, it was a performance, a perfectly timed punctuation mark to Olivia's dismissal. I mean, come on, Olivia continued, warming to her subject, the scorn in her voice growing. You sit at home in pajamas clicking on a computer. Real business people wear suits. They have offices. They have employees you can actually see. Michael nodded enthusiastically, a bobbing accessory to her tirade. He owned a commercial real estate firm, drove a Tesla, wore suits tailored so sharp they could cut glass. Olivia ran a tech startup, NextGen Solutions, that was making waves, she often reminded us. They lived in this glass and steel house in the suburbs with a pool and a 3-car garage. I, on the other hand, lived in a modest apartment downtown, working from my laptop. Olivia just closed a deal with Meridian Properties. $43 million. That's real business, Michael added, puffing out his chest. Then Olivia turned to me again, her tone dripping with false concern, like poison disguised as syrup. How much did you make this year from your online thing? The table waited, holding its collective breath. Mom looked like she wanted to disappear through the floorboards. Dad cleared his throat, a deep rumble, but said nothing. My younger cousin Chloe giggled nervously, quickly stifling it when she caught my eye. I do all right, I said quietly, the words barely a whisper. My throat felt dry, constricted. All right? Olivia repeated, the words infectious, contaminating everything they touched. You're 32 years old. Mom told me you still have student loans. Meanwhile, I'm expanding to 3 new markets next quarter. We just hired 15 new developers. Olivia, Mom started, her voice a plea, but my sister waved her off with an imperious hand. No, Mom. Someone needs to say it. She needs to hear this. You're not helping her by pretending her little side hustle is equivalent to what Michael and I do. It's not the same thing. Michael leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, a smug expression on his face. What's your revenue? Do you even have revenue? I looked at my plate. The salmon Mom had prepared so carefully, its flaky pink flesh, suddenly seemed utterly unappetizing. A wave of nausea rolled through me, threatening to overwhelm the rigid control I was maintaining. See? Olivia said triumphantly, her voice cutting through the thick silence. She can't even answer. That's because there's nothing to answer. Playing around on the internet isn't building a business. It's a hobby that might make you a few $100 a month if you're lucky. The entire table was staring at me now. Aunt Susan, Uncle Robert, my 3 cousins, all of them waiting to see what I'd say. I felt like an exhibit under glass, judged and found wanting. I folded my napkin carefully, deliberately, the crisp linen a small comfort against my clammy fingers, and placed it beside my plate. Understood. Olivia blinked. What? I understand what you're saying. You're right. I should probably think about getting a real job. The satisfaction that spread across her face, bright and triumphant, made my stomach churn. It was a visceral reaction, a deep twist of disgust. My cheeks felt hot, but my hands were icy cold. Finally, some sense, she said, practically preening. Michael actually mentioned his company might need an administrative assistant. It wouldn't be glamorous, but it would be steady income, real income. That's very generous, I said, standing up, the chair scraping loudly against the polished floorboards. Thank you for dinner, Mom. It was delicious. I should go. Mom looked distressed, her eyes wide and pleading. Honey, you don't have to leave. I have work tomorrow. Early morning. I kissed her cheek, a quick, almost imperceptible brush, and grabbed my coat. Olivia called after me as I headed for the door, her voice a condescending echo, think about what I said. It's never too late to join the real world. I drove home in silence. The city lights blurred past, but I saw none of them. My hands didn't shake. My eyes didn't water. I felt absolutely nothing, which was somehow worse than feeling angry or hurt. It was a chilling, absolute void, a profound numbness that settled over me like a heavy, suffocating blanket. It's a peculiar kind of psychological defense mechanism, this emotional dissociation, when your mind simply disconnects from overwhelming pain or humiliation. It's not about being strong, it's about survival, putting up a wall so thick you can't feel the blows. This deep-seated calm, this void, often masks an even deeper, more volatile storm brewing beneath the surface. My apartment was quiet when I got back. The stillness felt heavy, absorbing every sound, every lingering thought of the dinner. I made tea, the ritualistic warmth of the mug a small comfort, and sat at my desk, staring at the 3 monitors that dominated my workspace. The little online thing Olivia had mocked so thoroughly. But that was only the beginning of the nightmare she was about to face. What Olivia didn't know, what I'd never told my family, was that my little online thing was actually Crimson Capital, a venture capital firm I'd built from scratch over the past 8 years. I'd started small, investing my own money from a software patent I'd sold when I was 24. That patent had netted me $12 million, and I'd used it to build something real, very real. Crimson Capital now managed assets worth $890 million. We had silent stakes in 43 companies across tech, healthcare, and renewable energy sectors. I kept my name off everything. My partners were front-facing executives who handled the public side while I operated in the background, analyzing deals and making investment decisions. One of those 43 companies was NextGen Solutions, Olivia's tech startup. She had no idea. When NextGen had been seeking Series B funding 2 years ago, my team had presented the opportunity. The app development platform showed promise. The numbers looked solid. I'd approved a $150 million investment that gave Crimson Capital a 38% stake in the company. Olivia thought her funding had pulling out. Other investors think there's something wrong with the company. Our valuation is dropping. 2 major clients delayed signing contracts because they're worried about our stability. I know. I've been monitoring the situation. Of course you have. She wiped her eyes, a fresh wave of tears threatening. Are you happy? Did this make you feel better? No, I admitted, the word a quiet confession. It didn't. Then why did you do it? The question hung in the air between us, echoing the one I'd been asking myself for days. Why had I done it? Because I was angry. Because I was hurt. Because for one moment, I wanted Olivia to feel as small as she'd made me feel. Because you made me feel invisible, I said quietly, the words aching as they left my throat. My whole life you've been the successful one. The one who knew what she wanted and went after it. The one Mom and Dad were proud of. I've always been the quiet one in the background. The one nobody really noticed, Olivia. And I was okay with that. I genuinely didn't mind. I built something amazing without needing recognition from the family. But then you decided to tear me down publicly. You decided to make me look foolish and small and unsuccessful in front of everyone I care about, and I couldn't let that stand. Olivia's face crumpled, the last vestiges of her pride dissolving. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I thought I was helping you by offering you a job as an administrative assistant. I thought you were struggling. Mom mentioned student loans, and I just assumed. She stopped, unable to finish the sentence. I assumed wrong about everything. I was condescending and mean, and I humiliated you. You're absolutely right to be angry. I looked at her, my sister, the person who taught me to ride a bike and helped me with homework and held me when our grandmother passed away, before the competition and the comparison and the distance that had grown between us. I don't want to be angry anymore, I said, the words a raw admission. But I also don't want to be disrespected. You won't be. I promise. I'll tell the whole family what really happened. I'll make sure everyone knows how successful you are. I don't care about that. I don't need them to know. But I need you to see me as an equal, not as your little sister who needs guidance. As someone who's built something real and valuable. I do, God, I do. You've built something incredible. She looked at me with something like awe, something beyond fear or regret. $340 million. That's insane. It's what happens when you work quietly for a long time. And I almost ruined it by running my mouth. We sat there, two sisters who'd lost sight of each other somewhere along the way, now tentatively finding their way back. What happens to NextGen? Olivia asked finally, her voice small. Are you really going to liquidate your stake? I'd been thinking about this question all week. The business answer was clear. Pull out. Let the company find new investors. Move on. But the human answer was more complicated. I'll give you a choice, I said. Option 1, I sell my stake to new investors. They'll bring fresh capital, but they'll want control. You'll lose autonomy. Option 2, Crimson Capital maintains its position, but you bring in a professional COO to handle operations while you focus on product development. Someone with experience scaling companies, and you'll report quarterly directly to me. Option 2 means you'd still be involved? Yes. After everything I said, after how I treated you? Olivia's eyes filled with fresh tears. We're sisters. That has to mean something. Why would you do that? Why would you help me after what I did? Because destroying your company doesn't actually make me feel better. It just makes me feel cruel. And I don't want to be cruel. I want to be successful and respected, yes, but not at the cost of becoming someone I don't recognize. Sarah, I don't deserve this. No, you probably don't. But I'm offering it anyway. She stood up and crossed the space between us, pulling me into a tight hug. It was a fierce, desperate embrace, years of distance and tension beginning to ease. Thank you. Thank you so much. I hugged her back, feeling the tremor in her shoulders. We'll need to rebuild trust. That's going to take time. I'll do whatever it takes. I mean it. Then prove it. Run your company well. Listen to advice, and never, ever assume you know more about someone's life than they do. Deal. The restructuring took 6 weeks. Olivia hired Jessica Cho, a veteran COO from the software industry, to handle day-to-day operations. I sat in on the interview personally, asking questions about scaling strategies and team management. Jessica was impressive, competent, and unintimidated by Olivia's ego. Perfect. NextGen's board meetings became a regular part of my schedule. I showed up in person once a month, reviewed financials, provided strategic input. Olivia deferred to my advice more often than I expected. She was learning, slowly, to see me as someone worth listening to. The family dinner that December was different. Mom seated me next to Olivia, a deliberate choice, a hopeful gesture. Dad made a toast before the meal, his voice rich and warm. To family, he said, raising his glass. To success in all its forms, and to learning that we don't always know as much as we think we do. He looked directly at Olivia when he said it, a gentle, understanding gaze. She nodded, accepting the subtle rebuke. I want to say something, Olivia announced after the toast, her voice a little shaky but determined. The table quieted, everyone sensing the gravity of the moment. I owe everyone here, but especially Sarah, an apology. A few months ago, I said some incredibly disrespectful things about her career, things that came from my own ignorance and arrogance. She turned to me, her eyes shining with genuine remorse. Sarah is one of the most successful people I know. She's built a venture capital firm that manages close to $1 billion. She's invested in dozens of companies that are changing industries, and she did it all quietly, without needing recognition or praise from anyone. The table was silent, everyone processing this astonishing information. She's also been the primary investor in my company for 2 years, which I was too self-absorbed to realize. And when I disrespected her, she had every right to walk away. The fact that she chose to stay involved, too, help me succeed despite my behavior, says everything about her character. Mom was crying softly, tears streaming down her face. Dad looked proud and slightly stunned, a small smile playing on his lips. So, I want to say publicly that I was wrong about everything, and I'm grateful to have a sister who's not only brilliant, but also more forgiving than I deserve. The table erupted in a mixture of applause and shocked exclamations. Cousin Chloe demanded to know more about venture capital. Uncle Robert wanted investment advice. Aunt Susan couldn't stop hugging me. I caught Olivia's eye across the table. She mouthed thank you, and I nodded back, a warmth spreading through my chest. Later, after dinner, Michael pulled me aside, a genuine respect in his gaze. What you did for Olivia, giving her another chance. That took real character. I underestimated you, too. I'm sorry. Apology accepted. I smiled. If you're ever looking for real estate investment opportunities, I'd love to pitch you some deals. Send the details to my office. We'll take a look. 6 months later, NextGen closed a major partnership with a Fortune 500 company. The deal put them on the map in a significant way. Olivia called me the moment the contracts were signed, her voice jubilant. We did it! This is going to triple our user base. Congratulations. You've earned it. We've earned it. Jessica and I couldn't have structured this deal without your input on the strategic framework. That's what investors do. No, that's what good investors do. You could have walked away and let me crash and burn. You chose differently. I looked out my apartment window at the city skyline, the lights sparkling against the dark canvas of the night. You're my sister. That choice was always going to be different. I love you. You know that, right? I love you, too. After we hung up, I sat at my desk and pulled up Crimson Capital's portfolio overview. 43 companies, 15 of them approaching billion-dollar valuations. Returns that exceeded industry standards by comfortable margins. My little online thing was changing the world, one investment at a time, and nobody had to know my name for it to matter. I opened my email and started reviewing the next potential deal, a biotech startup working on revolutionary cancer treatments. The science looked promising. The team had experience. The financials needed work but showed potential. I made notes, asked questions, ran projections. By morning, I'd have a decision ready. That's what real business looked like. Not corner offices or expensive suits or public recognition, just careful analysis, calculated risks, and the patience to build something meaningful over time. Olivia had learned that lesson the hard way, but she had learned it. And somewhere in the process, we'd found our way back to each other. Not as the successful sister and the struggling sister, but as something new entirely. We found a path where respect and family could coexist, where power could be tempered with compassion. Do you ever wonder what profound lessons we only learn when someone pushes us to our absolute limit, forcing us to confront not just them, but ourselves?